Hi, I'm Andrew Rodriguez, and welcome to PsychoBible. So, a couple weeks ago, while we were celebrating our nation's freedom during Independence Day, that week, something very un-American happened. Ironically, or interestingly, through pressure from a British gay activist, Amazon started to ban books that it was selling on its platform already for quite a while. Amazon, the largest online retailer for books, for ebooks through Kindle, and for audiobooks through Audible, started with banning Joseph Nicolosi's book, A Parent's Guide to Preventing Homosexuality, and then proceeded to ban other books such as Coming Out Straight by Richard Cohen, the different books by Joseph Nicolosi about reparative therapy, such as Shame and Attachment Loss. And it didn't stop there. It didn't just stop at actual books on therapy for homosexuality or unwanted same-sex attraction, but they then proceeded to ban books by that are testimonials by people who have left homosexuality and found degrees of change in their own lives, such as Anne Paulk's book, Restoring Sexual Identity. And there are a couple others. Another book that I've used with my own clients, a therapy book called Battle for Normality by Gerard Vanden Aardwijk, a very helpful self-help style book that has also been banned. All in a matter of about a week. It was one book after another, starting with Nicolosi's books and Richard Cohen's books, and then down to just books about people giving their own testimonies and stories. And so naturally I get into different conversations online and social media, and I'm faced with the very typical myths and the tropes about conversion therapy I've heard 100 times already. And so I figured, you know what, I should probably do a series of short videos addressing these common myths and misunderstandings about what people are calling conversion therapy. So let's start with just addressing these bans and essentially book burnings. So over the past several years, attacks against therapy and other forms of help for people of unwanted same-sex attraction have just been heating up. Obama made it very clear in different statements that during his presidency he wanted to outlaw reparative therapy and any form of sexual orientation change effort. And then we've had, starting in 2012 with California, multiple states banning therapy for unwanted same-sex attraction for minors. And those are bans for what they call sexual orientation change efforts, which included any form of therapy or by a licensed practitioner that would have been to help people change not just attractions, but behavior and identity. And so at least a dozen states have since banned the practice, as well as multiple cities and other municipalities. Last year, in 2018, California tried to pass AB 2943. Actually, they could have passed it, but the author of the bill, Evan Lowe, Representative Evan Lowe, decided to pull the bill last minute, interestingly enough. AB 2943 would have banned all forms of sexual orientation change effort and other forms of materials and conferences and goods and services that people could pay for that would help them with unwanted same-sex attraction. And so it would have been falling under the state's protections against fraud and fraudulent practices or sales and services. So he pulled it, but he came back again this year with ACR 99, which actually is even worse than AB 2943, because ACR 99 is an infringement on the free speech of everyone, including pastors, dictating to them on what they could even say about homosexuality. And then this year, on a nationwide level, we're dealing with H.R. 5, the so-called Equality Act, which doesn't directly ban reparative therapy or sexual orientation change efforts, but it does mention them, and it provides a stepping stone to outlawing any sort of therapy for homosexuality in the future. And now we have Amazon banning books, essentially burning books that used to be available. I'm actually friends with Jeremy Schwab. He runs Joel 225 Ministries, an international ministry of support groups for people with unwanted same-sex attraction. And he was instrumental in getting deals negotiated with the authors of several of these books between them and Amazon to get their books available on Kindle and Audible. He actually recorded Joseph Nicolosi's books himself and spent years negotiating the deals and using his own money to make a studio to record the books. And I've listened to the books myself using his recordings on Audible. And he helped negotiate deals with Richard Cohen to get his books available on Audible as well, which has been really helpful because we have clients who may be overseas who can't necessarily afford all the shipping to get the book shipped to them, but they can read a book on Kindle. Or we have clients who would prefer to listen to a book. I've got clients with, say, dyslexia who have real difficulty reading. So you could say, well, Amazon, it's their choice who they work with, and they can choose to publish or to sell any book they want. Sure. Except they're pretty much the only game in town, or in the whole world, when it comes to audiobooks and Kindle books, and they're the main retailer. So it makes it very difficult to get these books available to other people, and they're breaching contracts, you could say, when they've already made deals with these authors to get their books available on their platform, and they haven't actually violated their guidelines. It's also very hypocritical when they'll say that they are banning these books because of the harm that they could apparently produce, yet they're offering books currently on their platform for how to commit suicide and how to commit pedophilia, or they still sell Mein Kampf. So, really? Is it about safety? The reality is LGBT activism has transitioned from just fighting for equality and gay rights to now LGBT fascism, and making sure that any opposition is squelched, that there's no other viewpoints being allowed to exist and be spoken. Heck, who knows if you'll be able to share this video with how open I'm going to be. The thing is, these activists don't actually know what therapists who do what they call conversion therapy, what they actually do, and what these books that they're banning, what they actually say. They're banning them without even reading them. They're making false accusations about what's in those books, and making laws to ban therapies based on claims that are at best exaggerated, at worst just completely fraudulent. And not only that, but they don't want you to know what it is therapists actually do, and what different Christian ministries that address sexuality actually do. And they don't want you to read these books to find out for yourself. Now that should tell you something, that maybe the claims they're putting out there aren't so valid. Because if they were valid, you wouldn't have any problem leaving these books available for anyone to look at, and they could easily verify your claims. But no, you can put out any sort of claim out there that these books teach torture, and then remove the books so that people just have to take your word for it. It's quite a trick. When Joseph Nicolosi, the founder of actual reparative therapy, died because of the flu back in 2017, I was livid because of all of the comments in the common threads on social media about his passing. People claiming that, they're celebrating his death, saying, good, He won't kill any more children. And he won't be torturing any more kids or people with same-sex attraction. And the ideas that they're putting forth about what it is he actually did in his therapy were completely false. So whenever I'm talking to people online about what it is reparative therapy, I simply point them to Joseph Nicola's website. I'm like, read it. He's never hid what goes into his therapy and what he teaches and what his therapeutic model is, what his conceptualization of homosexuality is and how it develops. It's never been a secret. It's available online. You could read his books, which his book is pretty large. So I understand if you don't want to read it, you could listen to the Audible book, but that's no longer available. But you could have read his papers. You could see a couple videos of him on YouTube explaining his model. And there's nothing in his model that is remotely like what the activists are saying it's like. So the truth is available. There's really little excuse for the level of ignorance that's out there. Nevertheless, these myths about what reparative therapy or conversion therapy is are still persist. And it's gotten so bad that even conservatives who may be opposed to, say, gay marriage, or conservative Christians who may side with the Bible when it says that homosexuality is a sin, will still distance themselves from reparative therapy or ex-gay ministries because the opposition has been so successful in their smear campaign that they've got everyone believing all these myths. So why? Why do it that way? Well, it's quite obvious. The LGBT activists, or fascists as they really are, the opponents of therapy and the opponents of therapeutic choice, they simply want to control the narrative so that they can promote their ideology only. And reality is, they've been controlling the narrative for quite some time. They can cry wolf and everyone will believe them. And that's the thing, is free speech is actually supposed to protect those with the minority opinion. And we're now at the point in the culture where those people who hold to the traditional view of marriage are increasingly in the minority. And those who actually want to provide help for people with unwanted same-sex attraction are definitely a minority, especially therapists. So, free speech is supposed to protect our rights to be able to share our thoughts, our viewpoints, to get it out there for others to engage with. That's actually what helps us come to a better understanding of the issue as well. But they want to make sure there's only one viewpoint being promoted and available even for people to learn about. Now they'll say this because they want to save people from dangerous forms of therapy. But it's not true, because when you see that these books are actually not promoting anything that's harmful, when they're backed into a corner, they will then say, well, it's because they despise the viewpoints themselves, that they don't see anything wrong with homosexuality anyway, so why should there be a therapy for people who want to explore their heterosexual potential or to try to heal what they believe are the root causes of the same-sex attraction. The reality is, it's not compassion. It's really resentment. Resentment from how much they hate normative sexuality, the traditional view of sex and gender, because of the awareness of how much they deviate from it. It's not compassion. It's really out of resentment that this counseling exists. They need to justify violating our own free market, our own right to a free market, our own right to pursue the type of counseling that we prefer as individuals, as adults, and as parents who want to find a therapist who's going to align with our own values as parents. So to justify that degree of violation of autonomy and parental rights, they need to create certain myths and propagate these myths repeatedly. So we have a few myths that are most common that I'm going to be addressing in this series. First is the coercion myth, that anyone who goes to this type of counseling is there only because they're being forced to, or they're gullible, they're being duped into going. You'll see this myth especially being repeated when it comes to adolescents in this type of counseling. And you have the harm myth, that the blood of all these LGBT youth who've committed suicide or have self-harmed is on the hands of therapists who offer therapy for unwanted same-sex attraction. And then there's the effectiveness myth, that it's not effective, it doesn't work. Everyone who has tried some sort of change therapy is really just suppressing their desires, and they're just going to go back into homosexuality later, that they're torturing themselves by, that they're tormenting themselves by not being their authentic self, which is definitely homosexual. So those are the main myths. There's some other misunderstandings as well, such as about every medical association and organization condemns reparative therapy or conversion therapy. Or that, it's not a mental disorder, so you shouldn't be treating it anyway. So there's a few other, not so much myths, but there's some rhetorical tricks that opponents will use. So we'll be addressing some of those as well. The reality is they care about their own ideology above everything else. They'll say that they're fighting against therapy because they care about LGBT youth committing suicide. But do they really care about that when they're not fighting to ban books on Amazon for how to commit suicide? Or when you look at the facts and you see that in countries that are the most gay affirming and accepting, the suicide rate for gay individuals or LGBT individuals really doesn't go down. You see that in the Netherlands and Scandinavia, which are incredibly progressive and gay affirming. The rates of suicide are not significantly different. And then when you look at how the suicide rates really don't go down in these gay affirming countries and regions, you guys ask, are they really pro LGBT people? Are they really for the flourishing of people with same-sex attraction and with gender identity conflict? By removing the option of them obtaining help, and whether through therapy or books, to reduce same-sex attraction or to change homosexual behavior or to adjust the way they identify, and pretty much only promoting one way of addressing conflicts over same-sex attraction. When you look at how unhealthy the lives are of people who are in the LGBT community, are you really pro-LGBT? You can't blame everything on stigma. You see that there's higher rates of mortality among the gay population. You see higher rates of drug and alcohol abuse, of other mental health complications like depression and anxiety. It's easy when you're ignorant to say that's because of stigma, but when you see that there's not much difference in the Netherlands and Scandinavia, you really have to question that narrative. No, they really want to create an environment where there's only one option because they want to silence anyone who promotes a normative view of sexuality. So they may be pro-LGBT, but not pro-LGBT people. Because if you actually care about the individual peoples, you would respect their right to autonomy. You would try to fight for them pursuing a lifestyle that is actually going to be most healthy, for their ability to actually engage in building a natural family if they have that desire. You would fight for their right to have to engage in heterosexuality if they want to seek that potential. So no, they're not pro-LGBT people. They're just pro their LGBT ideology. So stay tuned. I'm going to be addressing each of the myths going forward. If you haven't done already, please hit that subscribe button and smash that bell if you want to get notifications of when I post a new video. Thank you so much. God bless.